Okay, welcome to everybody. This is the 6th episode of Tech Talks by Agile Lab. And today we have Jon Cooke from Dataception. Hi, John.
Hi.
Do you want to provide a brief introduction by yourself?
Sure. So, hi, my name's Jon Cooke. I run a company called Dataception, and actually we are building effectively a data mesh solution, which is due to be launched very, very soon. Been in the industry for about 15, 20 years, been through the whole big data Hadoop, central lake platform, and data warehousing platform kind of journey, along with lots of other customers and clients. And seeing it's a really exciting time to be, with the new data mesh paradigm that's come out. So yeah, we're sort of building a solution around to solve that problem.
Okay, good. So today I'm really looking forward to understand better what is your vision about the journey to adopt the data mesh paradigm when a company is coming from a data lake or data warehouse landscape. So, in your opinion, which are the best steps to move forward from data lakes and data warehouse to a data mesh concept?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Paolo. Obviously, the first steps are you can't transition directly off a data lake, data warehouse overnight. I mean, that's definitely something that's definitely not in the business's interest. So I think the strategies we see kind of that are successful are basically taking a data warehouse and taking data mesh and basically slowly what we call hollowing out. So basically, you start with the data lake or data warehouse as a kind of a black box, as a bunch of data sources for the mesh itself, and you start exposing the tables, the end result of the tables of something like a lake and a mesh. You take the attributes out one by one, and you expose the tables, and then you start building products on top of them. And slowly over time, because you're taking the attributes out, and it's basically the attributes which map ideally through to the raw data sets. So if you imagine in a lake, you've got a pipeline where you've got data coming from a raw, from a transactional system or external system. It does some transformation, and then it outputs a data set. You expose the final data sets, and you take the attributes out from the final one and also from the raw one as well, and you expose them effectively as a product. And that way you are still using the lake, but fundamentally the lake's then acting as effectively, as I say, as the data source. So, and over time, because you've got the raw data, you can actually start migrating stuff off the lake bit by bit. So you can transition very slowly, very gently for the outcome as well. And the same is true with the data warehouse.
Yeah, and do you think that over time is sustainable to maintain some kind of ingestion from data lake to data mesh and keep them together, or is something that is a temporary solution and then you need to move to ingest the data directly from the source systems?
I think it's obviously going to be down to the business case, because obviously running two sets of infrastructure is going to be expensive and tricky, and also you're going to be maintaining two sets of the organization. But obviously, the lakes and warehouses are performing a business purpose. But I think the idea should be that you actually transition over time over the data mesh product. Sorry, got a little 2-year-old. She's not very happy. So basically, over time, you transition from the data warehouse and the mesh to the data lake and the mesh to the mesh paradigm, fundamentally. So that should be the idea. So you actually end up with one set of infrastructure that's running, with one organization and one set of infrastructure on that as well. So
yeah. So the transition from the data lake could be a tactical solution, but over time, I think that if you want to really take ownership over your data, you need to link directly the source system with the data mesh and data products. Otherwise, you will have someone in the middle taking ownership for you. So that could be a problem over time. You will not benefit 100% of the data mesh principles, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You end up basically doubling up. Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah.
And what about instead considering someone is trying to consider the data warehouse like a huge data product into the data mesh concept, like I don't like this idea so much, but I want to know your opinion about having a data warehouse domain or something like that. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because the what I've seen over many years and many data warehouse implementations, the data warehouses tend to be cross-domain, or if they're interdepartmental, they're cross-use case and cross-business use case type and cross-data set as well. So what you see is particularly these star schemas, these Inman type schemas, which are really span lots of different use cases. And for me, that's kind of going against the kind of the product orientated approach that you get with the mesh. So what you end up with is effectively one schema that covers a lot of different, which would be a lot of different products. So I think there's a challenge with that, and I think, you know, fundamentally what you want to be really doing is actually trying to create the products from the actual data that's in the data warehouse, but actually reorientated. So say you've got a a sales report that looks at, you know, sales by region. You might want a different product by region for that particular sales report. You might want a different product by production, by inventory, that type of stuff. Whereas the data warehouse will try and merge all that stuff together, and you really want to try and unpick that. So you actually, as you say, have these specific products which are very business use case focused, but very encapsulated. So I think, yeah, they are kind of going against each other a little bit, so you want to try and avoid that if you can.
Yeah. I think that these people are trying to leverage past investments in some way, but anyway, if you consider the data warehouse like a data domain, you're going to waste your future investments in the data mesh and so on. Yeah. Because you will not decentralize ownership, and you will not scale in terms of agility and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Because we introduced the concept of product thinking, no, and the decentralization of the ownership. What is your opinion about the difference between data as a product and data product?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We at Dataception have quite a strong opinion about that. So obviously, as part of the original concept, there was the data as a product was born, which is really just looking at the data itself, the data set itself. So fundamentally, you build your data set for your business use case, as you said, owned by the domain, and to solve a particular business problem, rather than having kind of a big schema to solve lots of different problems. That's really what the data as a product, in my mind, is about. The data products, I know it's quite confusing between the two, but in our world, the data product is actually more than just the data set. It's the model, it's the dashboard, it's the whole delivery. So in the data as a product world, you have the life cycle of the data set itself. So you have this input and output ports, that type of stuff. And the data set basically gets created, gets evolved over time. There's a whole life cycle around that. But the applications that use that, have a different life cycle. They should be in sync. So fundamentally, if you've got the lifecycle management of the data set, but not of the dashboard that's using it, or the machine learning model, or the mobile app, or whatever you are using it, then you're kind of out of sync. So in our world, the data product is where you combine all those things together and deliver them as one unit. So the mesh in our world, you create a data set, you create a model, you create a dashboard, and you package it all up and manage it on the mesh itself. So you get that kind of ownership, end-to-end ownership. You get that end-to-end lifecycle management and packaging and that type of stuff. That's kind of where we see it.
Yeah, I agree. So that as a product is a way of thinking. That a product instead is a unit of deployment, and is a composition of workloads, data, metadata, infrastructure, and so on. That's something that you need to think as an independent unit of deployment. And this is making a huge difference from an operating perspective, no? From a perspective, right? And in the past, a lot of data virtualization systems and so on enforced the concept of data as a service instead. What is the difference here?
Well, again, my understanding, data service is taking those data sets and actually deploying them as as I said, as a service, as a kind of an encapsulated piece where behind the scenes you don't know what's actually going on, but you're actually consuming those effectively, a bit like APIs, in an organization. And that could be internal for all the internal, or sometimes external. You've got a lot of data providers actually providing those as a service. So I go on to something like the Snowflake Cloud, for instance, the data cloud. That's actually a data as a service. It's a very good example of it, where the lots of vendors basically put data onto a centralized infrastructure, and you go and you purchase it and you access it and that type of stuff, and all the life cycle is managed behind the scenes. So that's definitely something from a consumer perspective is very attractive, because actually I don't have to worry about the management of all that. And I can get if the service has actually got lots of data in it from different vendors and stuff, I've got a lot of choice around that. But again, it's still just data. That's I guess the challenge we still see. Going back to our earlier conversation around the data product, it's the data life cycle of that. So if the data changes, and I've got my operational processes linked to it, or my analytical process linked to it, then I've got the control isn't there fundamentally to link those two together. So there's definitely an advantage around that. And like I say, data marketplaces are definitely something that's being used today, and they're very valuable. But again, you still get that synchronization link challenge.
Yeah, and data service, I think, is something addressable for data products, because in the end they are providing data as a service, but on top they are adding more aspects, and also they are adding the multimodal way to access the data. That is something not really present in the data as a service concept. Data as a service is really focusing on static data sets or something like that. Instead, we know that in data products we can also embed events and more dynamic way to consume the data. Always talking about products and product thinking. How do you think is changing the way the way we charge back data consumers in a data mesh architecture? Because when you are in a data lake with a shared infrastructure and so on, you can apply some billing model to data consumers. Typically is something also following change management and projects pushed from data consumers towards the data lake team. Instead, when you start to think in products terms, how do you think the billing model should change in an enterprise?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, because obviously with data warehouses and data lakes, typically, it's not always the case, but typically you have a kind of a central team, or there's a data lake team, or a business intelligence team, which is effectively a central team which has a central charging model, and they have to go to each of the individual departments and get the cross charging for all that, and attributing charging to a particular delivery on there has actually always been very, very difficult. I think in the mesh world, I see it very much like you're going, the mesh team is actually providing something like a cloud provider. So you get billing for the actual the service, the technical services the mesh delivers, but actually the delivery of the analytics or the data product is actually done by the domain team, which has obviously a cost center associated with it. So all the activities that go on, unless it's something like a new piece of functionality, technical functionality that goes on the mesh, it's all charged effectively by the team to the business that's actually building the product. So you should be able to get a very, very clear delineation between the deliveries of the data products themselves from a charging perspective, and the platform itself. So that's, I think, in my mind, it should make that demarcation very, very much clearer.
Yeah, totally agree. This is not about to charge back the cloud infrastructure cost, but you have to charge back also all the OpEx costs that you need to sustain to maintain the data products, to evolve it, and to publish it on the markets.
Exactly. And the thing is with that, because the mesh, you're building products and you're running them in our mesh, you actually run them on a cloud provider in a encapsulated form. So you can actually see where, if I'm running a dashboard with a bunch of data sets and I'm storing that, I can actually see that what the footprint of that is from a runtime, from a resource usage, that sort of stuff. And because I've got a direct cost center around that, I can actually see what that charging model is. In the lake and warehouse world, you've got who pays for all the ETL going onto the platform. That's not a direct business value, but it's a charge and it's a cost for doing that. So it makes it very tricky. But as I say, in the mesh world, you can actually charge directly literally all the ingestion, all the curation, all that sort of stuff to the actual domain itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important that data products are also exposing some billing policy in the self-describing principle, in my opinion, because no one will pay for your change request inside your data product. So in some way, you need to charge back the organization for the evolution that you apply to the data products.
Yeah,
very, very nice. If the mesh means that everybody can build their own data sets, how do you think we can avoid the too many data sets problem? And what about data duplication? And also, how can we understand from a data consumer perspective which is the right data set that is doing my job?
Yeah, that's a super important question for the mesh, and for me, that's the overarching kind of premise is actually it's a curation problem fundamentally. There's a number of aspects in the mesh that's from the original concept which kind of address that problem. One is obviously interoperability, making sure that every product can actually interoperate and actually be used across different other products, but also the curation piece. So fundamentally, going and finding existing assets, being able to publish assets when you've built them, the products and assets when you've built them. That's not just obviously with the data sets, but everything else as well, the models, the dashboards, the pipelines, that sort of stuff as well. And that's where the catalog comes in place. So this sort of workflow in our world is basically, if I want to go and create a new product, first of all, I want to discover what's on there already. So if another team have built a sales forecasting data set or a bunch of features for a recommender engine or something, and I want to build a new one, I would go on and I search the mesh through the catalog saying, where's that already? And and I do a search, and it basically brings up the data sets, all the different artifacts around that, and they're annotated, they're attached to a domain, they're described, it's got the self-describing piece, which again is another aspect of the mesh. Then I can start to reuse them, and I think that really is the key to actually avoiding the too many data sets problem, and also potentially avoiding the silo problem as well, which you could get with a mesh, with everyone building their own pieces. So yeah, the catalog and being able to actually get that curation piece, with people also actually adding things like reviews, and if there's an error in the data or something like that, how do you can I actually tag that up and actually send it to the product owner to say actually there's a problem with here, or it's not quite what I want, or that kind of interaction as well. So I think that's really important as well. Yeah,
right. Also because we don't have a central governance and a central data model in data mesh concept, the normalization is really common. So with the normalization, also possible dataset duplicates are coming for sure. So we need a strong way to detect these situations, and also to enforce the reuse of datasets, but not with a central governance, with a central control, with someone that is designing the global data model of the data architecture, but just pushing on the self-responsibility and the understanding of people about what is currently there in the data mesh platform, right? So, I think that some concept like data product catalog or something like that will arise very, very, very soon.
Indeed, and that's, I would say, we've actually included that in our mesh solution, where we actually have this catalog. But I think it's also important to get that concept for crowdsourcing. Basically building that community actually on the mesh, so people can actually interact with the data sets and actually post comments, and basically get the community to say actually we like this, we don't like this, that type of stuff. So bringing almost like the open source kind of crowdsourcing effect, which allows people to actually to know there's an issue with the data set, or they've got questions, and all those questions get curated as well. It's a bit like you go onto Git or to and you look and see like what are the issues, what are all that type of stuff. So you see all the information around the analysts, analytics and basically the analysis of the data as well. And so people can actually ask FAQs, all that type of stuff as well. I think that's really important. Obviously, that's quite an advanced set of features for the mesh, but I think that really would go, help the whole kind of curation aspect of it.
Yeah. And do you think that from a data consumer perspective, it is important to search and discover data products in a more semantic way? I mean, do you see some application of knowledge graph technology or something like that into the mesh area?
I think it's a very, very good question. That fundamentally be able to actually understand what the data is. And really, I guess it depends on kind of what you're using it for and kind of how you want to model the data, the semantics in each of the data sets. I guess that's one of the sort of challenges is what I found before is basically people kind of want to view data in lots of different ways. So I think that there may be a challenge actually trying to put one Uber graph, trying to connect stuff together, because you want to connect stuff. I mean, graphs describe behavior as well as actually sort of data linkage, and that and my sales view versus my marketing view versus my inventory view, they might be slightly different. So I do think there is at the very least you want to be able to tag data with particular domain specific kind of attributes, and we do this in our mesh as well. So I want to be able to tag that data set with the domain oriented, so it's sales, it's a machine learning, it's features, that type of stuff, so I can actually understand kind of roughly what that data set is. I want to start joining stuff together. Again, for me, it's you want to be able to join them in different ways and actually apply different graphs. That could actually be a different product, which basically says I want a sales view across, the behavioral sales view across all my channels. For instance, so I'd have a graph product saying, looking at all the linkages between the different channels, from potentially going to retail, going out to web, mobile, that sort of stuff. And those linkages are describing the behaviors. So I think trying to actually do one Uber model across the whole thing might be challenging. We might have different views, but in my mind, they're just more types of products describing more of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, also I think that when the mesh is increasing in size, you need some way to link business concept to the actual content of data products, and this is something related to data curation and also business concept curation. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to see more knowledge graph technology to address this kind of problem, and I think we are. This is going to be fun for us.
It is. But I think it's one thing we do about sort of baby steps, right? So the mesh is a new paradigm. It's really exciting. I think a lot of people are sort of starting at the first step. So just trying to get the mesh concept into their organization, get the concept of product thinking, which is a little bit of a leap. From where a lot of people do today, where they have these central platforms, these central models, this type of stuff, especially from the data warehousing world, where everyone tries to build these star schemas, inman schemas, that type of stuff. And I think that's kind of the first step. I think the graph stuff is brilliant, but I think it's going to take a little time to get there to flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, John, for this insightful conversation. I'm really looking forward to chat with you again in some other episode. And thank you to everybody, and bye-bye.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paolo. Great to chat with you as well. Thanks. Bye.